All right, friends, welcome. Good evening. Good evening. So, if you are here to learn about insulin resistance, what does that look like? And what do we do about it? Because it's a much bigger deal than most people think, and it affects a lot more of us than we think it does. And Melinda Hawk is going to be presenting tonight. And friends, get ready, get your paper, get a pen or a pencil and hang on because she did this presentation. She and Britta and I did a presentation, not a presentation. We did an event, a Young Living event in Nebraska recently, and Melinda did this presentation there, and it was so amazing. I learned so many things from her, and I said, "Will you please come on and do this for us?" And she very graciously agreed to do it for us. So, Melinda, welcome. I'm going to turn it over to you, friend. Thank you for being here.
Okay, awesome. Oh yes, I have to click on yes, it's okay if you record this. For my little corners flashing up there. Well, thank you, Rhonda. And yeah, that was a fun weekend, and that was a great group there in Nebraska. I'm Melinda Hawk. I'd say some of you on here know who I am. I've been part of Young Living for 13 years now. Um, 3 years ago, I went back to school and got a functional integrative health coaching license, just due to some own personal and family circumstances. Um, and have taken kind of a deep dive into metabolic function, how we function at a cellular level in the last 3 years. And I would say in the last 6 months, I went down a whole nother rabbit hole of insulin resistance and what that is, what that looks like, and how it affects the human body, male and female, and our children. Anyway, so um, it's actually been a very eye-opening for me as well. And so I thought I've got to share this. And so I'm just gonna kind of just dive in. I tell Rhonda, and she knows I always have notes. I just make sure they're all in order and not out of order, because I tend to like squirrel myself, and I want to respect your guys' time. So if you see me looking down, I'm literally reading from notes that are starred and are like, don't get off track. So if you guys have pen and paper, I would highly encourage you. If you do not have a pen and paper, go get a pen and paper. Because I'm gonna kind of go into kind of the what it is, the whys, but we're gonna do some very, very practical steps about reversing it. But one of the first things I want you to write down is a book called Why We Get Sick by Dr. Ben Bickman. If you want to take a deep dive into this topic, it is very well written. It is written in normal person's terms. I'm not a functional medicine doctor. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nurse. I'm not a chiropractor. I'm a mom who is trying to find solutions for her own family. And so I've just done a lot of educating of myself. But I'm coming from when I very first met Rhonda, gosh, like 14 years ago. Um, Macaroni and cheese, frozen pizza, Lucky Charms, it's Sonic drinks after school. That's where I've come from. And so to learning about eating for your metabolic function. So, if you are where I started, welcome to the table. If you're halfway down the road, welcome to the table. If you're a doctor, welcome to the table. Like we're here to learn. So Why We Get Sick by Dr. Ben Bickman. If you want to take a super deep dive, go check it out. Anyway, so let's get started. And I'm going to share a couple of stats that actually blew my mind when I first started doing this research. 93% of Americans have some degree of insulin resistance. Another word for insulin resistance is metabolic dysfunction. Insulin resistance is the underlying cause of over 79% of chronic diseases, including obesity, diabetes, heart disease, Alzheimer's, and many, many cancers. 80 to 90% of the medications that we take today are because of underlying insulin resistance, and many of us don't have a clue. Most of us, like myself included, don't even realize we're struggling with insulin resistance. Over 80% of people with high blood sugar or high blood pressure have insulin resistance. And most doctors, no fault of their own, don't know how to treat the root cause. They're simply treating the symptoms, which is high blood pressure. So there is a high chance that most of us in this Zoom room company here struggle in some form or fashion with insulin resistance. And yes, some people have more of a genetic predisposition to it. So, it's super common. So if you struggle with weight gain, sugar cravings, brain fog, fatigue, and that stubborn extra tire around your middle or on your thighs or on your hips, it's very likely you have some form or fashion of insulin resistance. And a simple test to know whether or not this may be an issue for you, if your waist circumference is larger than your hip circumference, you 100% have a form of insulin resistance. But the good news, because when I read that, I was like, the good news is all of it is reversible. And you can start today. This is not oh gosh, this is a forever. It is absolutely reversible, guys. And even if you struggle with like you already struggle or have an autoimmune or chronic illness diagnosis, you can reverse insulin resistance and drastically improve your quality of life. It does not mean you're doomed to this forever. So, what exactly is insulin resistance? Because I really, till I started doing more of the research, didn't understand the difference between like elevated blood sugar and insulin resistance. So insulin resistance is a condition where we eat too many carbs and the carbohydrates break down in our bodies as glucose. And so again, too many. The pancreas releases insulin so that glucose doesn't stay in our bloodstream, so that it gets into the cells where it needs to do its work. But because we're eating drastically more carbohydrates than our bodies can process, our signaling is off. Carbs are not bad. Please do not hear me. Carbs are bad. Carbs are not bad. We're eating, the vast majority of us, way too many carbs. So when I say our signaling is off, the best scenario I have it is I have 4 children in a row, 4 children in 5.5 years, and well, they're not teenagers anymore. I still have a couple teenagers. The other 2 in their 20s. 3 boys in a row. And eventually, the noise and chaos of multiple children in a row and then multiple boys, you just learn to tune it out. And so it's like when my kids would come up and be like, Mom, 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 like 5,000 times. And then you just really don't even notice it anymore. Or case in point, a neighbor called me during COVID when we were all in lockdown and out of school and like had to stay in our little half-acre lot. I literally locked the kids out of the house. I'm like, I've got to have some peace and quiet. They went on the roof and I didn't notice because I was just so used to the noise. And a neighbor called me and was like, Hey, Melinda, I just wanted to make sure. She was so kind, by the way. I just want to make sure it's okay with you that your boys are jumping off your roof. That is when I noticed there was like, like Santa's reindeer were on my roof. They were loud. I had just tuned them out. So my signaling was very off. Um, so little scenario, like with your bodies, and kids on your roof jumping off. There's something that should not be happening there. That's what happens when our insulin signaling is off and we're eating so many refined carbohydrates. This is pretty much the vast majority of America. We are telling our body, I need insulin, I need insulin, I need insulin to bring the blood sugar down. And after a while, your body just can't deal with the load of carbohydrates it's being given over time. Because the insulin is now kind of just ignoring you. And what happens is that insulin in your body, it's a hormone, starts to creep higher and higher and higher over time. And when your insulin levels get high, again, this is different than blood sugar, you cannot lose weight and all kinds of other things happen. You have a switch in your body that when insulin gets turned on and is up too high, you cannot lose weight. I don't care how much cardio and HIIT and stuff you do, it's not going to work. Does this sound familiar? How many have you been trying to lose weight and just feel like you can't budge no matter what you're trying? If that is true, it is because your insulin levels are too high. Again, I'm not talking blood sugar, I'm talking insulin. And we're going to talk about how to lower that today. So, lots of good news here. We're going to talk about how to improve our insulin sensitivity so that it's not overwhelmed and we don't have this issue that so many of us are struggling with and the downstream consequences of autoimmune diseases and inflammation and elevated blood pressure and all those things that so many people struggle with. And what have all of us been told over the last 40 to 50 years? What is the one like major food group macronutrient that we've been told that if we don't get this under control, we won't be able to lose weight? Can you just put it in the chat what you think? Like avoid this or you can't lose weight. I'd be curious to see. I'm a child of the 80s and 90s when everything was like, yeah, okay, bread, sugar, 80s and 90s, fat, 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 fat. Okay, fat. 80s and 90s, they weren't really talking about processed food or sugar. They were talking, I'm a child of that era. It was fat. They were telling you not to eat fat. If you eat fat, you will get fat. We've been told that fat is the devil in our diets. And y'all, I struggled with an eating disorder all through high school and college. And most of my young adult life, I was told eat low fat. How many of you have been like, eat low fat? Most of us have believed the lie, capital Lie, that fat makes us fat. They believe the lie that fat causes heart disease. They believe the lie, we believe the lie that fat causes obesity. I thought so. For decades, we believed this, and most of us have followed a low-fat diet in order to stay away from being fat. The problem, when the food industry took out fat, they took out the flavor. It becomes quite ugh. And so what do? They put in sugar, extra carbs. And most of us have become addicted to a high carbohydrate diet because we've been trying to avoid fat. And what has happened in the last 30 years as we've watched this trend? Obesity, and diabetes and metabolic dysfunction disorders have skyrocketed. And to the point now where 93% of us have some kind of metabolic dysfunction or aka insulin resistance. Now, when we eat carbs, our bodies don't know how to process it well. And it's not my fault, not your fault. Like, this is decades in the making. A lot of babies are now born with higher insulin levels. The fattest generation, sickest generation ever is my kids' generation. Like, it's like the number one health problem in America is obesity. I'd say it's insulin resistance. So we end up with high blood sugar and over time, high insulin. And those insulin levels make it absolutely impossible to lose weight. So do you see how the problems above are all connected to high insulin levels? It is the root cause between our American epidemic of chronic disease. Overconsumption of carbs is at the root, and the elimination of fat. So most of us were alive at the time when we went to the grocery store and we could just there would be like that one junk food aisle. But friends, there are now self checkouts in my little Walmart in town where it is like an 8-foot aisle that is lined on both sides by junk food. It is a gauntlet of diabetes in multiple wrappers. I do most of my grocery shopping online now because I have a hard time saying no to those amazingly packaged and eye-catching Reese's Pieces peanut butter cups. They're my downfall. Raise your hand if you struggle with pieces, chocolate and peanut butter just go together. We have never ever lived in a time where there are so many ways to eat so badly. And when there were so many options that those companies that are making those foods now know how to make us addicted. It is a whole science. Um, Carbohydrates are highly addictive substances, especially the way they make them now. They have high fructose corn syrup in them, food dyes, toxic fats, and specific chemicals that are literally engineered to make us want more. That combination of high carb and high bad fat and sugar is what is making us sick. It is what is making us insulin resistant and what is making us literally addicted to the food that is killing us. Fat is not the problem. When we take in the amounts of overly processed carbohydrates, it causes a rapid spike in our blood sugar. And when our blood sugar spikes, insulin is released. Is released from our pancreas, which is actually over on the side. When insulin is released and stays high, your body is locked in fat storage mode. When we eat high carbohydrate, it causes a spike in blood sugar. And that causes, like I said, insulin to be released. So now our insulin is high and it turns basically like a lock in a mechanism in your body, and your body is fat storage mode. It is impossible to burn fat when your insulin is high. And how many of us have beat ourselves over the head because we can't budge? We're doing everything we can to budge our weight and we can't budge it. I want you to think about what you eat on an average day and ask yourself, is this thing that I'm eating spiking my blood sugar? Is it causing my body to need to release insulin in order to deal with it? I mean, look, food is medicine. When we look at what we is on our plates, is this going to help us get further down the road of where we want to go? Is it kind of a non-issue, or is it this is not going to help my body? Like, I try not to like demonize certain foods because that is an area that I came from. But is what are we putting on our plates actually nourishing our bodies in the way it needs? And so, like, I'm of the generation that absolutely loves cereal for breakfast, or I thought oatmeal every morning was really good for me when I, got away from donuts and coffee. And then I thought, oh, just straight up intermittent fasting. I won't eat breakfast. I'll just do coffee and I'll intermittent fast. Also, very, very hard on your body to a certain age. So, guys, this morning and what I've been doing for the last several months, my average breakfast is like 4 eggs, 3 pieces of bacon, and half an avocado. Took me a little bit of time to work up to that, but bacon and eggs is a very high fat, high protein breakfast, and that high protein and high fat breakfast does not spike my insulin at all. It actually sets the tone for my day. Like I said, most breakfast foods are high in carbohydrates. Most breakfast foods in the United States spike our insulin, our blood sugar, and then it makes it impossible for us to burn fat. The other sneaky thing, when your insulin is high, it makes you very, very hungry. How many times in your life when you literally were just hungry all the time? And like you would eat every 2 hours and then you're hungry again. That's because it's very likely that the food that you are eating, unless you're nursing a baby, which, I nursed babies for several years, so you just eat a lot and eat frequently. Um, your insulin is high and it makes you store fat. So, sorry, I sidetracked myself there. Anyway, when you're eating high carbohydrate, you're spiking your insulin. The insulin is high and it makes you store fat, and then it makes you more hungry. And so you're stuck in this vicious cycle of, oh my gosh, I'm hungry all the time. I'm hangry. The whole hangry term. You are not eating enough protein. You are not eating enough fat, and you are eating too many carbs. And what happens, it eventually leads to your blood sugar crashing because your insulin is high, and it's going to take all of that blood sugar and put it into the cells. But guess what happens? A lot of times that insulin will overshoot, and it will then cause your blood sugar to crash out. And now you're really, really hungry. So most of us women in midlife, and a lot of men too, but it's mostly women on here, are living in a blood sugar roller coaster all day long. Blood sugar is low because maybe you just had something that caused your insulin to spike. And so your insulin overshot to compensate, and now your blood sugar has crashed back down and you're low. So then you eat something, and guess what you are craving when your blood sugar is low? Carbs, right? Of course. So most of us are living on this roller coaster all day. And it's not just that the roller coaster itself is making us unhealthy, sick, and overweight. It also feels terrible to be on that roller coaster every day. This is also the reason, the way many, if not most of our kids are eating. And we wonder why our kids are struggling with mood, toddlers included, and why we are struggling with mood ourselves and that up and down. That also has to do with what we're eating. It's not just women's and hormones. It's not just crazy teenagers and hormones. It's not just a toddler being a toddler. It also has to do with happening in our bodies with our blood sugar levels. So this goes across all ages, sexes. Like, this is kind of a universal what the human body does. And so this cycle, this blood sugar insulin cycle, where we have sugar crashes, hunger cravings, overeating, too many carbs, is causing the high insulin levels. And this roller coaster that most of us are on is incredibly inflammatory. It is a very, very inflammatory way to live. And when we start off at birth behind the 8 ball, some of us just have a little bit more work that we're going to have to do than others. So what happens when your body is also inflamed? It spikes your cortisol levels. We talk a lot in the Anointing Nations about cortisol and calming and oils to use, which I'll get a little bit into that. But this lifestyle begins to spike cortisol. And think of how your body feels when your blood sugar is kind of low and you feel like you got to eat something now. And I've got to eat something and drink some orange juice, or usually that you're craving something really sweet and you get that kind of frantic feeling. And you're doing that multiple times a day. The body is releasing this vicious cycle of, okay, I think my notes went backward here. Yes, my pages are backward. That blood sugar insulin roller coaster is just very stressful on your body. And so your body releases stress hormones because your body's like, this is so stressful to live in. So now we also have high cortisol levels. And guess what high cortisol levels do when your blood sugar is high? It also mobilizes your insulin. So now we just have made this roller coaster a lot more dangerous. We took our seatbelts off on the roller coaster. And I don't know if you saw what happened in the news this week, that poor family on the roller coaster that had to hold down the kid at 75 miles behind them. I mean, it's terrifying. That's what's happening in our bodies every day. And we don't realize it. We do know that we're stressed. We're not handling things. We're not sleeping. We can't lose the weight. We feel chronically on edge. We basically took the seatbelts off and jumped on a roller coaster. Yeah, couldn't have timed that horrible news story any more better with tonight's call. So add to the fact that the processed white sugar carbs is more addictive than cocaine. And I'm sounding like a doomsday. This is hopeless. What happens when that, it causes dopamine to release, and it causes a similar process in the brain to when we do drugs, shoot heroin, or when you drink alcohol. So be kind to yourself. Like, I just want you to hear, be kind to yourself. We are trapped in a cycle that don't really even realize that we're in. So, Another thing, insulin is a growth hormone. I mentioned that earlier briefly. Now we've got high insulin levels from these carbs. We've been eating insulin, and insulin causes things to grow, like your waist and other areas of the body. You know what else it causes it to grow? What it causes to grow? Cancer cells. Did you know that cancer cells feed on sugar? And if you want to help to treat cancer, you starve it out by cutting sugar. Cancer cells grow so fast, they really need sugar as a primary fuel. So think about the fact that for most people, 90% of your waking hours are probably spent with the blood sugar roller coaster and high insulin, these constant cravings, never being able to lose weight, fatigue after meals, difficulty going very long between snacks or meals. And that's just where most of us are finding ourselves. And this insulin resistance, what happens is over time, our fat cells are taking in as much glucose as possible. And they eventually say, our cells say, I cannot do it. The cell, I'm the cell, is going to burst and die. And what ends up happening, the cells themselves start to leak out cytokines. Y'all remember COVID and the cytokine storm of when people got really, really ill and they were talking about the cytokine storm? That's not the only kind of cytokines. Like when our body is in an inflammatory state, that's what that is. There's different levels of cytokines being released. So they start leaking out these inflammatory cytokines, these molecules that are yelling, things are not good here. We have more than we can handle. Red alert, red alert, red alert. Our body is in crisis. And guess what? That initial signal, some of the initial signaling of that, joint pain, swelling, inflammation. That's one of those signals. The fat cells grow so big that they cut off their own blood supply. So the body has a self-preservation mechanism that says, we need more blood flow. We need more help here. And the body's literally crying out for us to lower our blood sugar, lower the insulin level so that the inflammatory cytokines can come back down as well. So it's just a very dangerous way to live. So do you hear me when I say the real culprit is not fat? That's not our enemy. The real culprit is all the damage being done to our organs and our blood vessels from this high insulin level and all of the stress molecules that our bodies are releasing. The chronic inflammation creates a vicious cycle that feels like a treadmill you cannot get off of. And I know many of us know this so well. And certain ages that we reach, it becomes that much harder because our hormones begin to drop naturally. And some of those protective barriers that we have with good, solid female hormones also make it more complicated. So in Dr. Bickman's research, he makes a link between insulin resistance and obesity. He makes a link between insulin resistance and diabetes. He makes a link between insulin resistance and heart disease. And this next part that I'm going to share actually really surprised me. But it makes a whole lot of sense because this is my mother's generation and I'm watching this play out in real time with a handful of her friends and several of my friends' mothers. And it's just heartbreaking. We are now finding that there is a link between insulin resistance and dementia. Alzheimer's disease is not called type 3 diabetes, but it could be. It's insulin resistance for many people in the brain. And how many of you know women who are in their late 50s, 60s, early 70s that suddenly, fairly rapidly developed dementia, forgetfulness, and then died fairly quickly? It's happened to two of my mom's friends here in the last year, and it's happening to another dear friend of mine. And she's now her mother went from a year and a half ago to now doesn't even know her. So, and then they die really young. Nobody's ever questioned if insulin resistance is a possible link. If you look at things like PCOS, endometriosis, hormone balances, many different cancers, insulin is a growth hormone. It causes things to grow. And it usually causes things to grow that we don't want to grow. Okay, now hear me when I say insulin, we need insulin. Insulin is, if we did not have insulin, we would die. That's why people with type 1 diabetes, the immune form, have to take insulin. We cannot survive without insulin. We need it, but we need it at the levels that our bodies can actually process and deal with it. Okay, so that was part one. This is the disaster that most of us find ourselves in. So part two, solutions, hope. I want you to take very careful notes here now. We're going to go over 5 key ways that we can all reduce insulin resistance. And again, like I said, there is no chance that 90% of you on this call here aren't also struggling even if you don't realize it. Okay, so solution number one, reduce your carbohydrate intake. Reduce your over-processed sugars. Carbs are not the demon again in the room. It's the overconsumption of carbs. It is sorry, I'm sitting on my bed because it's like the quietest place in the house, but I need to stretch. Over-processed sugars or starchy carbs, again, like I said before, is what I'm eating going to cause my blood sugar to spike and then my insulin to spike. Honestly, a bowl of oatmeal in the morning is like a really hard thing on your pancreas to eat. Sorry for those of you that love oatmeal. Really not a great breakfast food. So I'll just dash your hopes out the door in that area. You can look up the data on all of your breakfast foods and what is the glycemic index of every food out there. And so look up eggs, bacon, sausage, nuts, seeds. I had a friend this last year introduced me to like salads for breakfast, and I went, "Oh, I'm actually not a salad friend." But then I ate her salad. She's got bacon, she's got avocado, she's got chopped up egg, she's got chicken, she's got mandarin oranges. She has this gorgeous high protein salad that she actually, personally, I wouldn't eat that 5 days a week for breakfast. I'm still not I'll eat it a couple of times, but what are you eating that's going to nourish your body? Is it going to cause your insulin or your blood sugar to spike? I would highly recommend, if you think you struggle with this, or you have already your doctor's already talking to you about your insulin levels, going up, and your A1C levels are creeping towards the area you don't want to go, or you're pre-diabetic, speaking to your doctor about a continuous glucose monitor, like find out, what does rice do to my blood sugar? What does a sweet potato do to my blood sugar? What does broccoli do to my blood sugar? What does a cinnamon roll do to my blood sugar? Um, work alongside your doctor. And if that's something you already know you currently struggle with, and look up foods on the glycemic index. And once you see what you're eating, you might think, well, it's a whole grain or a bran muffin. It's healthy for me. But when you can see how your body's responding to it, you will be aware of whether it has a dramatic effect or a minimal effect. And we're all a little bit different. So I can't tell you for sure. I can tell you cinnamon roll is going to spike your blood sugar. I can tell you that. That's kind of a no-brainer. Or Lucky Charms is gonna just spike your blood sugar. Eggs are not, but some of those are no-brainers. But there are some other foods that are gonna affect more people strongly than other. So really consider cutting out sugar, processed grains, starchy carbs, and replace them with proteins and fat. Meat, so look at meat, fish, nuts, leafy greens, healthy fats. So if you're getting full on things that are nourishing to your body and not spiking blood sugar levels, there is a theory out there that until your body gets a certain amount of protein, it will continually be hungry. I just know, I'm not 100% sure on that theory. I just know we do continue to eat until we're not hungry anymore. And what I have learned in the last several months, the amount I'm eating anywhere between 30 and 50 grams of protein for breakfast every day. every day within the first hour of waking up. I do not intermittent fast anymore. Really hard on your cortisol levels as well, especially when you drink coffee and do that on an empty stomach. That just destroys your cortisol levels. Not to mention it's very, very difficult um, on your digestive system. So I'm going to answer questions at the end. So if you prioritize protein early on your day, you start your day out on a nice even ride. And me, who used to need to snack every 2 to 3 hours because I'm like, well, I'm hungry. I just have a really high metabolism. No, I was not eating enough protein. I needed the protein. When you're satiating yourself with enough protein and healthy fats, you can easily go 5 to 6 hours. And I'm not talking about nursing moms and growing teenagers here. I'm talking about those of us that are more in your 30s to 40s, 50s, and beyond. You're going to tweak it a little bit if you're a nursing mom or growing teenagers. I do work with a couple of teenagers, and we're tweaking it for them. So if you prioritize that high protein, high fat first hour of your morning, your blood sugar starts out super stable. You're going down a lazy river, not a freakish roller coaster with your seatbelt undone. Is it hard to make the switch if you're used to eating starchy, carb-loaded, sugary breakfasts or only coffee? Yes, it is hard. It was hard for me, but it's so important to begin doing this. And every single person I've worked with, myself included, feels so much better when they do this. They can feel their bodies literally begin to calm down. It is very stressful. Remember, I said when your insulin and your blood sugars are doing this. Okay, so that was number one, reduce your unhealthy carb intake. Two, add in the things that you do need. Like I said just a little bit earlier, healthy protein and fat. If you are hungry again within an hour of eating, what has happened is that whatever you ate spiked your blood sugar and insulin went high, and now you're hungry again. So, if you are really learning how to eat well, learning how to lower your inflammation, avoiding processed seed oils, lots of junk food, and the overly processed packaged foods that are loaded with seed oils, soybean oil, canola oil, rapeseed oil, you're going to want to add in your healthy fats like avocado. I cook with a lot of avocado oil. I cook with a lot of butter. I cook with a lot of ghee. I have a family that's half dairy allergies. So, that makes it a little, I do ghee instead of butter when those particular people are home. Ghee, beef tallow. I cook with beef tallow. Um, these So you want to get rid of your soybean oils, your canola oils, your rapeseed oils. Those oils increase inflammation too. And remember, at its core, insulin resistance is a very inflammatory state. We want to reduce that inflammation. And we do that with how we're eating. So not only have we been told that fat is the problem, and we now have diets that are so high in carbs and not high in good fats, many of us are now also on cholesterol lowering medication, and cholesterol is the substrate for all the hormones that our bodies make. And guess what? It's a primary hormone for our brains, our brain tissue. We need cholesterol for our brains. Women, we need cholesterol for our brains. And if we are not getting enough fat to our brains, we're not getting the tools to make the hormones that we need to make. How many of us struggle with our hormones? I have for years. For years. Almost all of your good hormones are made from cholesterol. So you want to be careful to get plenty of good fat in your diet every day. Again, I'm going to harp on this. It is not fat that makes us sick. It is the overly processed carbohydrates in them and the bad fats in the form of seed oils that are making us sick. Okay, so number 3, strength training. Strength training. We have been fed a lie that if we lift weights, it's going to make us look bulky. It's going to make us look a certain way that we don't want to look. Strength training will help give us the shape that we want. But more importantly, that muscle that you're building is key to your longevity. Guys, I also work part-time for an elderly care organization. I was at a sweet 90 or 6-year-old's house today who was mowing her lawn up until this year, which we really didn't want her on the mower anymore. But, I guess if she dies happy, she dies happy. We've been trying to get her to not mow anymore. Well, guess what she quit doing this fall? She quit mowing and she just started sitting. And I've watched her in the last 3 months go from this very vibrant person to someone who can hardly walk across our living room anymore. Her muscles and her legs have wasted away. Our leg strength is key to our longevity. And I'm watching that play out in real time with some of my elderly clients. And I'm like, oh, I want thunder thighs again. I want my big swimmer thunder thighs that I got made fun of for in high school. That I teeny tiny little waist, but I could hardly put the jeans over my thighs because I had powerful thighs. That is key to your longevity. If you can get up and down, if you can be on your hands and knees and scrubbing that floor, or I want to be able to get on the floor and play with my grandchildren. I need good, strong legs to get up off my floor. So, what does that mean I need to do? Move my body. There is a direct correlation between the amount of lean, not mean muscle, lean muscle you have in your longevity. The studies now show that thunder thighs, and I'm talking, not talking like, we're super fat, but I'm talking about like strong muscular thighs are one of the key signs for longevity. The other thing that happens is that muscle is very sensitive to insulin. So remember, part of the problem is so many of us are insulin resistant. If you want to stabilize insulin, you need strong muscle. You need to build muscle. As you build muscle, that helps you use glucose more efficiently. That lean muscle, again, correlates to longevity. You show somebody with really like good, strong female body. I think what's that? It's not Encanto. Whichever. There was a new Disney movie in the last 5 years. I'm like, oh, those are strong female characters. Like they were muscled. Um, we should be strong. We shouldn't be ashamed of that. So something really practical that you can do as soon as you're finished eating, go for a 15-minute walk. How hard is that? Or do 20 to 40 air squats. I eat breakfast in the morning and I immediately do 20 to 40 squats. Could I do that in the beginning? No, I was dying after 7 or 8. My husband and I last week started doing wall sits. I haven't done wall sits since college. I died after about 30 seconds. The end of 1 week, I'm up to 2 minutes on doing wall sits. Is where you're sitting with your back against the wall and you're in a chair position. He died after 30 seconds. But again, he had just started again. So, you want to build those strong leg muscles. So walk after every meal. I'm not talking heavy cardios or running, just a good steady walk or 20 to 40 squats after each meal. Okay. Get your body moving is the point. Get those muscles built. Number 4, okay? Improve sleep and reduce stress. Just being in a high insulin state can cause your body to like emit cortisol. Poor sleep is also another thing that causes the body to release cortisol. Cortisol is a stress hormone. We need cortisol, but not in elevated levels. I mean, our body, again, like insulin, we need insulin. So don't hear me say, cortisol is a bad thing. We need it, but not at continuous elevated levels. It is very stressful for your body to stay up high insulin and high cortisol. And we have so many amazing essential oils that help and products that help us with sleep. I love taking the Deep at Night Essence. It is a new product that came out this last year that is amazing for sleep. And just put in the chat, what are some of your favorite sleep oils for those new people? You that are more veteran oils or even newer, like what are some of your favorite oils for sleep? Shout it out there in the chat. Cedarwood, Endoflex. Yeah, Endoflex over the thyroid is amazing for sleep. Cedarwood plus lavender, Sleepy Eyes, Vetiver, Peace and Calming, Tranquil, Rutavala. We have so many options, guys. Did you also know that like our like orange and lemon And our citrus oils are calmers. So you think of them like they're uplifters, but they're also calmers for some people. So play around with oils. Like, don't just try one oil one night and be like, oh, it didn't work for me. Give it 4 to 5 days and switch up the different ones. So I love the Deep Night Essence supplement. I love the various oils for sleep. I keep a little thing next to my bed, which is right over there. Young Living Super Magnesium before bed. Magnesium is so important for so many different bodily infections, functions. We need magnesium. So this super magnesium before bed is a really, really important for so many of us. Progestins Plus for me. And Mary, I just glanced down. The new hormone supplement is helping so many people. Taken at bedtime with Ningxia Red, mix those together and make like add a little bit of warm water, like hot water in a tea. Um, yeah, amazing. What decreases as we age? Progesterone. Progestins Plus is huge. You can do Ningxia Red, Daily Hormone Essentials, Progestins Plus. A lack of progesterone is honestly one of the reasons so many of us women don't sleep as well. So just because you're menopause, perimenopause, doesn't mean you don't still need progesterone. Um, I like to take a salt bath using magnesium flakes and use progesterone over my thighs, my breasts, thin skin on my back and abdomen, putting 2 to 3 drops under my tongue. Yes, I do. Before bed, I keep Progestins Plus by my nightstand with my sleep oils. Getting sleep is vital for insulin management. You probably have already noticed this, but if you have had a bad night of sleep, you will crave high sugar foods in the morning. It's our post-sleeping is screaming baby breakfast. And shift workers honestly super struggle with this too. So if you're a shift worker or a nurse, really focus on getting the protein, especially after a 12-hour shift. Um, Losing sleep will make you crave the wrong foods the next day. So prioritizing sleep and healthy protein and fats helps with those sugar cravings. Okay, number 5, we're going to talk about supplements, and I kind of touched on that. Ningxia Red is one of the most powerful supplement drinks on the market to combat insulin resistance. It is so high in antioxidants. The wolfberries really do help with blood sugar regulation. They're packed with polyphenols, which is just a fancy word for like really good things for your cells that help bring your cells into a state of harmony. So they're packed with polyphenols and essential oils. The help they give us with regulating blood sugar, reducing oxidative stress, and I didn't know what that meant. So for those of you that were like me, what is oxidative stress? I grew up near farming. So think of a rusty barbed wire fence. Like antioxidants are the cleaning off of rust. Our cells rust. So antioxidants help to clean up and make ourselves nice and shiny again. They're full of antioxidants. And they're incredibly helpful of fighting inflammation, unlike anything else I've seen out there in the market. I'm in my 10th straight year of drinking Ningxia Red. My first 2 or 3 years, I ignored Rhonda and I was like, I don't really need that. And she's like, Melinda, just try it. And I ignored her. And then I finally did. And now I'm stuck on it. And I do a 14-day reset. I've done one the last 4 months in a row, which a 14-day reset is something that Young Living has. It really helps you work on diet and overall lifestyle, high quantities of Ningxia Red, moving your body, really helps with balancing blood sugar. And I know several type 1 diabetics that it is really helpful for them, not just type 2. Max, just wait. Sorry, my dog's trying to get out the door. So the high antioxidant content reduces the inflammation that is often caused by things we're not eating in our diet. Now, please don't hear me say, well, I can eat whatever I want and I'll just drink Ningxia Red and do all the things. You might as well be eating Oreo cookies and brushing your teeth at the same time. I want to say this. I went in that order, like food, getting rid of the bad carbs, adding in proteins and fats, the strength training, sleep, and then supplements in that order, because otherwise you're truthfully just flushing your money down the toilet. Just going to be honest. You need to feed your body really well. It's super important to focus on that. And if you guys struggle in this area of those habit changes, okay, he's driving me nuts. Hang on one second. I'm going to let him out the door. Ah, okay. Thank you. My niece was standing at the door like, do I come in? Do I not? I hear his little feet prancing. Anyway, if you know you need to make these changes, but you're struggling to make these changes, there is a group that has been going on for 3 years now. I think, right, Rhonda? I want to say 3 years. It's called the 14-Day Reset, and it is a group that they only run it for 14 days, but they do it every single month. And I needed that in the beginning because I needed to have an army of people locking arms with me and encouraging me and cheering me on and recipe sharing. And guys, like, I went to nutrition school, and what I'm supposed to quote unquote charge to work with me, you get it all in that group for free. Okay. You're just buying things you read. And it's super, super helpful in that group. So I would strongly encourage you to join the 14-Day Reset. There is also another group that is specifically for those that are struggling with insulin resistance called the Metabolic Reset Group. Their nutrition plan is very, very specific. It is very, it's kind of a keto, and a lot of Ningxia red and some very specific vegetables and stuff. So if you want to talk with Rhonda or I afterward, I can answer some questions. But I would encourage you, if you're looking at making these changes, the 14-Day Reset with Ningxia red, super high antioxidants, and doing it in a group format to make those dietary changes, to make those, sorry, squirrel when they come in and out the door. Because it's lifestyle. It's not actually just 14 days. And know that you're not going to make changes overnight. So you need people encouraging you and cheering you along in your journey, because it may have taken you 20, 30, 40 years to get into the boat you're in. It's going to take you, maybe a year or two to get back where you need to go. And that those groups are incredibly helpful. So, I'm trying to think about Ningxia red, prioritizing fats and protein, moving your body, walk, squats, lifting body weight. I don't think I said that, but you can lift your body weight. Simple changes in your supplementation like Ningxia red, super magnesium, deep night essence. We can tweak some of those things for what you need. But I would just recommend living on the reset lifestyle is going to make fundamental metabolic changes. And I've watched it happen over and over and over again the last 3 years of people I've personally worked with. And so it's a great way to reduce that inflammation and get back into a healthy state and to stay in a healthy state. So that's it. Thank you for my time. That was long. I'm going to open it up to questions. Thank you guys.
Melinda, that was great. So much information. I have lots of notes again. Okay, so
I know there
friends,
was a
if
bunch
you
of questions in the chat, so
I was going to say, yeah, you want to go through there. And also, meanwhile, what I was going to tell everyone is if you have a question, you're welcome to unmute yourself and ask your question. Just remember that it's Melinda or none of us are here for, specific medical type advice, but we can give you some ideas of what we have experienced and that type of thing.
I have a question. Is there an optimal time to take the Ningxia?
I would say, okay, this is such an arbitrary answer. You figure out what your body likes best. So I would say, like, if you're really, really focusing on insulin resistance, like, you've got an issue, eat your really healthy protein, high fat, high protein, healthy carb meal, and take your Ningxia Red in that same space. Because when you're doing that, what you want to do is give your body a break. So I used to eat 5 or 6 mini meals a day up until honestly this last year. And then I made some of these fundamental changes. And now I eat about every 4 to 5 hours. And I'm truthfully not at all hungry in between. So if you're snacking in between meals, you're still causing your insulin and your blood sugars to go up and down. And so I personally, I do my Ningxia Red with meals, but I do like a packet before bed. And a packet before bed, especially with that daily hormone essentials, is really helpful for a lot of women for sleeping. So kind of play around and see what your body likes best.
Thank you. And then just one more follow-up onto that. Since you mentioned a packet before bed, is it okay to have more than one packet a day?
Oh gosh. Okay. 14-day reset. You're drinking 12 ounces a day. That's part of the
Okay.
reason I love it's like you're drinking 6 packets a day for the first 3 days because they want you to like front load the nutrition. Okay, this is another, and I don't think she's on the call. One of my dear friends, Joy, when her daughter was 2, I think she's 10 now, was notorious for getting into the refrigerator and drinking half a bottle of Ningxia. The worst thing is it's expensive. No, you can absolutely because it's a very high protein drink. So if my kids are sick, which I had a teenager just come through like a bout of mono, I basically gave him most of my Ningxia for the last month. And I'm like, I front loaded that teenager with a lot of Ningxia. He's recovered really rapidly. And the phytonutrition. Ningxia and phytonutrition have been his 2 key things that he's been drinking the last 5 weeks in this recovery from mono. And I will say, out of all 4 of my kids who've had mono, he recovered way faster than anybody else. I didn't do that with the others. I didn't know to. So 12 ounces a day was his norm for like 2 weeks.
Okay, thank you.
Great
Because I
question.
love it too. I'll drink a ton of it, but I'm just not sure what's right or not. But thank you. Very
Yeah.
informative.
No, great question.
Okay.
I bare minimum 2 ounces a day. Used to be 1. I've upped it to 2. And when I'm doing the reset, it's like 6.